Hi, I'm Meg. I'm here today on Cherry Red TV to talk with Bridget St John, who Cherry Red proudly reissued three of her albums that were originally released on John Peel's cult Dandelion label. They were Ask Me No Questions, Songs for Gentlemen, and Thank You For. So, Bridget, you came from a very musical background. You've said that your mother was an accomplished piano player, and both your sisters went on to be classical pianists. Was there always music around in the house when you were growing up?
Yeah, there was always music. I mean, my sisters didn't play classical piano professionally. They just got, through eighth grade everything, and both of them still play for great joy and pleasure. And my mother, as I said, was very accomplished. She used to help a classical professional blind piano player to do his score. So there was always somebody playing something, and there was a lot of classical music, a lot of opera playing in my house. And when I was younger, my father always said that when I was 2.5, I hummed the air to Greensleeve. So I suppose that was my first influence. I don't know. But
So what was the first sort of music that you felt really passionate about, perhaps when you were growing up, your first sort of...
the first single I ever bought was Cliff Richard's Living Doll. So I suppose if I was willing to save up my pocket money and spend it, that was my first sort of passionate purchase. Yeah.
Okay, so it's also said that you played piano first.
I did. I played piano till I was 11, and I hated being told what to do. And so I said, I'm not doing this anymore. And they said, well, you have to do something. So I chose the viola, and I did that for 2 years. But I wasn't very serious about it. And my teacher recognized that I kept holding it like a guitar. So she kind of agreed with me that it wasn't working out. But she gave me a banjo, actually, before I stopped working with her. And then my parents still didn't want me to have a guitar, so I learned the trumpet for 2 years. And just before I left school, my grandmother gave me £20, so I went and bought a gut string guitar, and that was my first guitar just before I went off to university.
Excellent. Do you ever have any desire to return to the previous instruments, or once you got a guitar, was that it?
It's definitely my instrument. I feel that I can write very kind of organically between my voice and the guitar. I feel very, very comfortable. But I have written a few songs on piano, and I still love the piano. I just my knowledge of it is not very great. I tend to arpeggiate more than anything else.
When you speak about writing, your lyrics are very poetic. Did you ever write poetry, or do you still write poetry?
I still write poetry, but I started long before I could play anything, and long before I thought about singing what I wrote. I wrote poems, definitely, yeah.
Was there any particular poets that influenced you, or indeed lyricists that you felt were poetic?
Well, I think everything I ever heard influences me without me realizing it, but some of the poets I really liked were D.H. Lawrence, E.E. Cummings, Rainer Maria Rilke, but there's probably so many more I haven't mentioned. But I think really a lot of the things I read just seeped in, and I perhaps don't know how they've come through me, how I've assimilated them.
Yeah, definitely. So you started probably singing at university. Was it quite easy to do? Was there a scene to fall into, or were you...
It wasn't really that. It was that when I was at school, I did do theatrical productions, and when I went to Sheffield, the group that I felt most drawn towards was the theatre group, and it just happened there were a lot of musicians that could play guitar within that group of people, so I learned a lot just by watching them and them teaching me chords and things, because I think I probably knew about 3 chords when I first went there, so I started learning from those people.
And you've mentioned before in previous interviews you're very close to the now sadly deceased John Martin, and that he was a major influence on your guitar
definitely.
playing.
Yes.
When did you meet him? How did that come
I met him
about?
in the summer of 1967, and I'd been living in the south of France, in Aix-en-Provence. It was the last summer before my last year at university, and really I was supposed to do a year abroad, and I didn't want to. They said, okay, you have to do a term abroad, so I really didn't go and do my study, so I met up with a group of Americans, one of whom, Robin Fredericks, I became very friendly with, and she came back to England with me when it was time, when my 3 months were up in Aix-en-Provence, and one day she just said, I want you to meet a friend of mine, and that friend was John Martin. I was 19, he was 17, and he was living just south of the Thames over the Richmond Bridge, and that was sort of the beginning of a really well, the 40-something year friendship. So, and he really, I mean, he was the first person that helped me make a demo so I could get that to John Peel. He was the first person to take me down to Les Cousins, or Cousins as it was called, and help me begin to play, you know, just as later John Peel took me around on his gigs, you know. And he taught me a lot about tunings and helped me buy my first steel string guitar. A lot of very important milestones for me, you know.
That's brilliant, yeah. And so it was in 1968 when you recorded your first session with John Peel. What came, was it
The Night Ride?
Yeah.
Well, John Martin took me to a friend of his at that time, I hadn't met him, Al Stewart, who had a Revox, a reel-to-reel, and we recorded 4 songs, which then became the BBC demo. And you had to have an audition before anyone could sort of put your music on the air, so that was my audition tape, which I passed. So then John was allowed to sort of have access to it and play it on his program Night Ride.
Yeah. So did he initially then get in touch with you because he was so taken with these recordings? Or
No, actually what happened was he was introduced to my music through a mutual friend of ours, Pete Roach, who was a poet, and had been helping John get poets for the Night Ride program. And so when he was going to play my songs, he told Pete Roach that I should come along and be there. So actually he was listening to them for the first time with me there, having met me for the first time. So it was all new, you know.
Right. So then you went on, you've stated as well in previous interviews that John helped you, took you along when he was DJing.
Yeah.
And was that then a natural progression to record for his Dandelion label?
Yeah, it just kind of grew out of that. I mean, I've read in interviews where he said that he sort of started the label because he wanted to record his friends, and I was one of them. So
yeah,
that I think it was very much, it just grew out of his love of music, you know, not a sort of a financial thought in his head, really. It was just about wanting to help people get their music out there.
Yeah, I think that's always something that was very appreciated about John Peel, was that when he liked someone, he wanted to help them.
Oh, definitely. And he gave you time to grow too. It was never like, well, you're going to make one album, and then if that doesn't work, you'll go on. We'll go for the next one. It was always like, well, this is your first record, and we'll see what the second one's like, and the third one. There was always the thought that it would go on, you know, and not just try to find a one-hit wonder kind of thing.
Yeah, he actually produced your Ask Me No Questions album.
Yes, he did. Yeah. It took 10 hours to make the whole album.
Wow.
And I would say at least an hour of that was on the Ask Me No Questions track. He did really, really nice things with the bird songs and the church bells. Yeah.
And then you then went on to record Songs for a Gentleman. Did you find there was a natural progression with that one? I think I read the budget sort of jumps up a bit, which by today's standard is still...
It's probably very low. I don't remember what it cost. I mean, originally I was going to do an album with Paul Samuel Smith, who was producing Cat Stevens, but I think his budget was too high. And then Ron Geeson I had known him through playing gigs and was a friend of mine, and we decided to do that collaboration, and he produced the second one.
Okay, and then was there a progression again on to Thank You For, or did you feel
I think on to Thank You For, I felt like I wanted to be a little more in control, you know, and because Ron definitely was the producer, and I definitely was pleased to allow that to happen, but I think I wanted to see what it was like to be a little more, you know, well, let me see what I can do. So it wasn't just me, it was me and the engineer Jerry Boyes who co-produced the album. So it was a little more laid back and less produced, really. Yeah.
Okay. So alongside the likes of John Peel and John Martin, you must have rubbed shoulders with a lot of other sort of movers and shakers of the time.
Yes, I did.
Was there anyone that particularly stood out to you as being a major influence
on my music?
On your music, or even just on your career, just...
Well, as I said with the writing, I think everybody you are in contact with influences you, and I think also some of those people you played with years ago, like now I'm touring with Michael Chapman, and I think these things come full circle, and you don't perhaps realize that at the stage that you're in that, you know, it's going to come around again. And same with Kevin Ayers. We were all with the same agency, Black Hill Enterprises, and that's how I met Mike Oldfield and David Bedford, Kevin Ayers, all those people. And you know, all these years later, I've done something on Kevin's latest album, and who knew that would happen? You know, I don't think any of us did, but that's what happened.
How did you find sort of being a woman around this time? Was there any definite hurdles being a solo woman, or do you think you had the same opportunities as the solo men of the time?
It was very different than it is now. I mean, it seems to me that anybody can do anything if they just dare, you know. And I think back then, mostly labels tended to have one woman, one female singer, in general, not probably exactly, but I mean, I was the only solo person on Dandelion, and I think it perhaps was a little harder, but I didn't really see it like that at the time. I was just trying to do my music, you know. But in retrospect, you know, I realised that there's hundreds and thousands of women doing it today, and it's no more unusual for a woman to write songs and sing than it is for a man.
Yeah, do you ever find that perhaps because you sing in a slightly lower, deeper voice, that this was something that was ever criticised or indeed complimented?
Oh, definitely. It was criticised when I was at school. I was told to stop singing because I couldn't sing the high notes, so I'd make up, you know, a harmony, an alto harmony, and the singing teacher said, well, I think you better stop singing because it's a horrible noise. And so, you know, it started that young, and it wasn't until I heard Helen Shapiro, who did a single Don't Treat Me Like a Child when she was 16 or 17, I think, and she had a very low voice, and I was like, oh, okay, you can sing if you've got a low voice, and it definitely helped, you know. And Dusty Springfield didn't have, you know, it was very high soprano either, and just people like that made me feel a little more like things were possible, you know.
Okay. So you moved over to Greenwich Village in 1974. Initially,
In 76, actually.
76, sorry,
Yeah.
my facts are wrong.
That's okay.
Initially, why did you decide to make that move? Was there any particular reason?
Well, I was seeing somebody at the time, and it was like, okay, so I've always wanted to see New York, and that was sort of the catalyst that got me there. But once I was there, I felt very comfortable, and I was there for 6 weeks initially, and then I came home and just took care of a lot of business and went back again a couple of months later. And I didn't really know where everything was going to lead. I just knew that's where I wanted to be, you know, and here I am 32 years later.
Yeah. Was there any initial, when you moved out there, did you see really any contrast between the sort of British folk scene and the American folk scene, or indeed similarities?
Well, being in New York City, it was very different. I mean, I happened to hook into a club called Kenny's Castaways, which in 1977 just had this really fantastic musical. Actually, I suppose it was like a glorified Cousins in a way, that the music would go on all night, but on a much bigger scale in terms of more people coming and more people able to come because the space was bigger, and people like Steve Forbett and the Roaches and oh God, so many people, Chris Smither, a lot of people, Steve Goodman, would all come and play there, and then later on at night they'd all play their new songs after they'd played their sets, you know, and it was very, very creative time then.
Yeah. Did you feel it's maybe perhaps more creative, like inspiring to be in New York at that particular time than London, or?
I think it was for me. I mean, New York is very concentrated. It's a very small space compared to London, and it's very much easier to find the music all in one. Well, now it's much more diversified, but when I went there, it was basically in Greenwich Village, and you could go, you know, just walk a block, and there'd be a whole lot more music in another block. And I think London just was a little more spread out, and I didn't know it as well, you know, as I came to know Greenwich Village.
Did you ever feel particularly homesick when you first moved out there, or were you just too busy enjoying yourself?
I don't think I'd use the word homesick. I think I got very busy and very involved in playing and being around music, and if anything, I think I was a little selfish and forgot to reconnect with home sometimes.
I've also read that in previous interviews that you said you don't feel comfortable being considered an idol, despite the sort of...
No, I don't. First of all, I don't think it's for me to say how other people see me, you know. I mean, to me, I'm only as good as the last thing I just did. And if that wasn't good enough, then I need to get better for the next time I'm out there. And I don't feel comfortable with a label like that, no.
Yeah. So what sort of inspires you to continue performing? Is there...
Probably recently, it's that people ask me to, and I'm amazed at the life that my work still has. I didn't. I'm sure when I was 21, I didn't, which is when I made my first album, I didn't know that it would have a life 40 years later. I could never have even thought that. So to me, that it's very gratifying, and that people say, I want to hear you sing. That's probably enough, actually, to, get out there and sing again.
Yeah. Has there been any particular moments in your life, for example, perhaps the birth of your daughter, that's really inspired you to create again?
Well, ironically, when she was first born, it was the opposite. It was like, I have just created the most mammoth song of my whole life, and I did not feel like singing for a little bit, and I knew I needed to be a mother first.
Yeah.
So it probably wasn't until 1995 that I started doing anything, and even then it was sort of stopping and starting, and so I can't remember the rest of your question, though.
No, just asking if sort of,
Other moments that inspire me to sing.
is there aspects in your life where you've sort of felt the need to sort of get up there and sing again, or has it always just been part of your life?
Well, it's a thread that's run in and out of my life. So it hasn't always been a burning desire to sing all the time. Although I feel like I'm coming back to that now. I think basically life is circles, and I think this circle is coming round again, and it feels very comfortable to be here again.
So yeah, and how does your daughter view your musical career?
She's very supportive. She talks to all her friends on Facebook. She has a lot of friends who know my music, who are her friend, and so she's great.
So how do you feel about the way music today, performing as a performer today, as opposed to when you first started out? Is there anything that strikes you as being massively different? I'm sure there's many things.
Well, I think the main thing for me is the circuit I used to mainly do was colleges, and I don't think that really exists anymore, And so I'm fine. This is all new for me, I'm playing places with Michael that Michael's played, but I never played before, and I'm finding that there's all these wonderful places I never knew existed, So it's sort of like a new journey for me.
Yeah. Do you think it's sort of missing the college scene? Do you think that's something...
I'm surprised that there isn't one. It just seems like the obvious place to... I mean, I remember when I was at Sheffield, we had Ike and Tina Turner, Little Richard. We had everybody through there, as well as obviously lesser-known names. But I can't believe that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah. What about in the time when you sort of first were playing music? Obviously, it was sort of part of the... It was time when protest songs were around and, Were you ever massively part of that?
No, I'm very, very apolitical, and I would say since I've had Christy, my daughter, that I am beginning to actually think differently and speak up when I think something's wrong, whereas before I think I was so involved with my own, small world and heart and head and all of that I didn't feel the ability to express anything vaguely political. And I think I'm becoming a little more comfortable with speaking out,
Yeah. Do you think
in a small way.
Do you think it's something that's necessary that's maybe lacking a bit from today as people sort of...
But there's a lot of music that is very in your face and very direct and very much saying when people don't agree with things. I mean, there's always been the other side that won't address any issues, but I think there are more people today speaking up. I mean, not that I like all of it, but there's a lot of rap music that really is very political.
Yeah, true.
And very honest, and the I would say it's probably a judgment, but the rap that I find to be good rap is sort of communicates as opposed to just knocks you over the head with slogans and things. But I think there's a lot of good. And I'm saying rap. There's a lot of other areas of music too. And there's always been writers that will, speak up. I mean, Bob Dylan still does it.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
So, for example, speaking about music today, how about women sort of singer-songwriters today? Do you sort of look at them and compare to how it was at your time? Do you think it's easier for now?
I don't really see life like that. I don't live my life through comparisons, but I mean, I recognise there are a lot more women writers and singers that definitely speak their mind. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is Jill Sobule. I think that's how you say it, Sobule, in America. I mean, she's very political, but she's also got a sense of humor, and she's very independent. And Annie DeFranco. I mean, there's a lot of women, I think, now.
And do you feel proud that perhaps this was something that people like yourself have maybe helped to open the door for, being a female solo artist?
Well, that's great if that's true. I
Because
mean, I don't really... I'm very bad at having an overview of things or analysing things, but that's for someone else to do.
Yeah. Okay, so you live out in America now full time? When you come over and play in England, do you notice any sort of massive differences with sort of culture, perhaps music, or
Well,
do you play a lot in America now?
Not a lot. I play in New York. I don't, travel a lot, but do I notice differences? I mean, we've been travelling a lot on this tour, and some of it all looks the same, and other things are completely different. But I think basically the audiences certainly that come to hear us come to listen, and I don't think that's really changed.
Yeah.
I think that's the main thread through everything, is that if you have something to say and people want to hear it, they will listen. I don't feel it's like hugely different for me anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so what's been the highlight of your tour you've been doing this time?
The highlight of my tour? Well, I think probably lots of highlights, actually. I mean, playing with Michael has been great, because we've actually started doing some songs together, and I recorded with him on his album. I did some background singing, but that's the extent that it's been. And although about 15 months ago, we did 3 dates, and we played a little bit, but we're playing more this tour, and that's really great. And I think the whole thing has been a highlight in a way, just the reconnecting with a lot of people who saw me a long, long time ago, and then some people that I've never met before, and it's just been a really good feeling.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. You're now going to play some songs for us.
Yes.
And so this has been Meg with Bridget St John. She will now play some songs for us. And thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Bridget St John. I'm going to play a couple of songs, and with me today is Michael Chapman. We've been on tour for 3 weeks, and he's going to play second guitar with me on these 2 songs. The first is a John Martin song. It's called The River. It's an early song of his, and I like to play it. It reminds me of when I first met him in '67, when he was living by the Thames, the river. So, John Martin's The River. Waking up and finding he's not there. Sleepy, looking round to find out where I am. Get out of bed, go tripping down the stairs. Before you eat your breakfast, say your prayers. The early morning pigeons fly around, getting startled by my lonely footed sound. And yesterday's newspapers flying too, whirling down the wind that I once knew. Red and yellow birds go drifting by, reflecting in themselves the windy sky. And you walk along beside them in a dream. The river smiling bravely through the rain thinks everything is really just the same. And the rain comes down and wets the curly hair of the children playing where your memories were. The red and yellow birds go drifting by, reflecting in themselves the windy sky. And you walk along beside them in a dream. You wonder where they're going and where they've been. The river smiling bravely through the rain thinks everything is really just the same. The rain comes down, wets the curly hair of the children playing where your memories were. And the rain comes down, wets the curly hair of the children playing where your memories were. John Martin, The River. The next song we're going to do is one of the first songs I wrote. It's called Ask Me No Questions. It's on the first album I did of the same name. Ask me no questions, tell me no lies if you don't mind, and come with me. There where the sun flies, there where the sky is bluer still, is where we'll be. Take nothing with you, I'll give you everything I can. Have no fear, for if you stumble, or should you fall down on the way, be there. Close your eyes, my love. Close your eyes gently. Tell a soul of what you saw. It's just for you. Keep this a secret. Make me a promise that you will. I'll make one too. Close your eyes, my love. Close your eyes gently. Calm. Ask me no questions. Tell me no lies if you don't mind, and come with me. There where the sun flies, there where the sky is bluer still, is where we'll be. This song is called Mon Gala Papillon. Papillon is butterfly, and roughly that means my festival of butterflies. Si je chante, si tu danses, sommes contentes tous les deux. Et si tu danses, quand je chante, tous ensemble, quel bonheur. C'est mon gala papillonne, la musique et l'histoire. C'est mon gala papillonne, c'est mon gala pour ce soir. Mon gala papillon.
sing, and if you dance, this could be perfect harmony. And if you dance while I am singing, this could be perfect, you and me. C'est mon gars la papillonne, la musique et la gloire. C'est mon gars la papillonne, c'est mon gars pour une fois. Mon gars la papillon. Mon gars la papillon. Si je chante et si tu danses, sommes contentes tous les deux. Et si tu danses quand je chante, tous ensemble, quel bonheur. C'est mon gars la papillonne, la musique et l'histoire. C'est mon gars la papillonne, c'est mon gars pour ce soir. Mon gars la papillon, c'est mon gars la papillonne. La musique et l'histoire. C'est mon gars la papillonne. C'est mon gars là pour une fois. Mon gars la papillon. Mon gars la papillon. Mon gars la papillon.